Sales Proformance Show.
Welcome back to the Sales Proformance Show, everybody. I'm your host, Dave Sliman. I am pumped about our show today. We're going to be talking sales with a guest who knows this in and out, upside down, all around. He knows what sales is all about. He's got a great company, and I'm super excited to dive into not only elevating your game. Listen, if you're a sales professional, if you're a sales leader, if you're a sales executive, if you own a sales organization, you're going to want to listen to this podcast today. You're going to get a lot out of this. We're going to talk about some of the economy, some of the things in the economy that are challenges in the sales realm. We're going to talk about his software, which we're going to dig into here in a minute. But really, this guy, he's received his MBA from Stanford. He joined Google, became a top executive global sales executive for global, and then for Google. And then he started his own organization, his own company called Badger Maps, which we're really going to dig into today. If you've got outside sales team members or you're an outside professional, we're going to dive into this program today and get all his insights, all his wisdom. So I really would love to welcome our guest, Steve Benson. Steve, thanks for being on the show today. We're excited about it.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dave. I'm excited to be here. This is great.
Yeah, this is going to be great. All right, so listen, we're going to dive right into the economy. You've got a vast amount of experience in the field sales world, which I've come from myself. And I really want to talk in right now. Let's dive right in. You know, what are some of the challenges in the economy right now? And I want to dig into your background a little bit too, and how that, but I really want to tackle this one right now. I want to jump right into it. But what are some of the challenges right now in a bad economy that really come up in the sales world that a lot of professionals are facing, or even organizations for that matter?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of it's been a challenging and weird economy for years, right? And obviously, you know, I don't know when exactly this will go live, but it's been a weird start to Q3 in 2024 here, I would say, just economically. And it's unclear if, you know, some economists think we're in a recession, some don't yet. And it's unclear. Clearly, things that we can see, the stock market's had some pretty volatile swings, and the stock market's not perfectly aligned with what's going on in the economy, but there are some underlying things going on. And I think from a salesperson's perspective, what's important is people feel like there's something going on. A lot of people feel like there's something going on, and there's a lot of distractions. But economically, if leaders of businesses, decision makers in your buying cycle, the person you're selling to is worried about spending money or thinks the future is uncertain, worried they're not going to get that next loan, worried they're going to lose a customer or a key account, worried their customers are going to buy less, they change their behavior and may not want to invest in something. And so you do have to change how you do things a little bit different, a little bit, and you can switch things up with in a variety of ways to connect better with someone in that situation. You know, we can dive into that. Another thing that I think really pops up when things get on unsure footing or people get nervous is your competitors start acting weird, right? So if your competitors are concerned, or if they get desperate, or if they're in trouble, they may, you know, liquidate inventory to make their ends meet, right? They may give away things, whether it's, you know, free consulting or you know, the price things that basically give away levels to steal customers from you, right? They may change their discounting policies, and everyone has to kind of start reacting to things, or they might think you're doing that, so they start doing it to kind of counter what they think you're doing, when really, you know, it just would. instability is a tricky time to do things, and things have been volatile, right? Um, and maybe customers don't want to meet with you as much. Maybe they don't want to engage. Maybe they're worried about some big thing or dealing with some big thing, which makes them more resistant to change, makes them more resistant to do things. And maybe you're running into spending freezes, right? So maybe you're running into a procurement office who's really coming down hard on you, to try to really squeeze extra money out of them, on the deal, which frankly is their job, right? So, I guess all these things going on, what's important is to zoom back and ask yourself, what can I do about it, right? What can I do about these challenges in the economy, challenges from competitors, challenges from how my prospects behaving differently, my customers behaving differently. I think as a salesperson, one thing that you can do is early on in your relationship with a prospect or with a customer, you can make sure you're asking the right questions up front to discover what you need. You start negotiating basically with the way you behave from your first interactions, right? You have to and one way you have to make sure the prospect understands the value that they're going to get from your solution should they invest in it, because it's harder to get them to invest in things, and so they really have to understand, I'm going to get this, right? So you have to make sure that you're putting your what you do in terms of actual dollar value. Here's the ROI that you're going to get from this. And then, if people are skittish, they want a lot of concessions, they want to really negotiate hard on price, you can point back to that. Hey, we agreed on what the value was. We agreed, you believed you were to, be able to lower inventory by this much, or get this many more sales, or lower costs by this much, whatever the business driver that your solution helps with. You can point back to that and say, hey, we agreed that this was up front early on, and that we figured out that this is what you were going to get. So if you're going to make, $2 million, doesn't it make sense to spend $250,000 on this?
Turn on this
one. And that allows you to hold firm in your positions on things.
Yeah. And listen, you've said a couple things here that I want to really come back to. Okay. Because we're talking about challenging times here. And like I said here, for our guests listening, Steve has a huge acumen in the sales world, and we're going to dig into that a little bit more here. But I really wanted to start it off with the economy and hit it in the eye now, because it is a challenge. And there's a couple things you said here that I really want to hit on. The first one, understanding your competition. I think a lot of times we get so laser focused on bringing on the new deal, looking at the targets, hitting the prospects, jumping into that we really miss on the side here in the other lanes what's going on with our competition. And I'm never bashing it or anything, but just understanding it. That will give you a leg up in itself, understanding what they're doing, their positioning, because sometimes it can work into your advantage, and other times you can pivot and make some turns if you need to. So ultimately, I think that's a big point right now in an economic time that's challenging. Understand the heartbeat of your vertical or what industry you're in, and understand what the competitors are doing. Study that. It's very important. And then the second thing you just said here, which is huge, and this starts whether you're in a tough economy or not, setting expectations. I really am huge on that in my trainings with professionals. Whether it's the first meeting or the 500th meeting, set expectations, one, on what you want to explain to them, what the agenda is going to be, but more importantly, try to get some expectations of what they want to get out of it, right? And I think that's where that relationship will get stronger. When you ask that simple question, what would you like to get out of today's meeting, right? I think that's so missed, because we just want to jump into all our stuff right away. Hey, I got this. Hey, I got that. I want to go into this. And they don't hold the ground to really take a second to understand what the customer wants. And I think that's a big point that you made.
Yeah, I mean, and that's communication 101, right? Listen to the person you're communicating with, right? You're an expert in the stuff that you're selling or what your business does. They're not, right? So you don't know what they know. If there's 17 things to know, they may know 16 of them. it's with questioning and asking them what they want to get out of it and probing and understanding them that you can uncover that which one they're missing, especially because there's so much information out there now. Like a lot of people, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when we were selling in that first meeting, a lot of times the person didn't know very much. Today, they know a lot more, right? Like you basically never have to talk to one of our salespeople as a buyer of our software if you didn't want to, right? Like all the information we do put on the website. Now, the website has 2,000 pages though. So like a salesperson's great to point you and listen to you and figure out exactly where you want to go to get your questions answered, right? Now, there are search bars and stuff, but like bottom line, all the information's out there. A lot of people are showing up with about a ton of information, but your job is to figure out what they still don't know or still need to understand better. We were just talking about ROI. Like we have an ROI calculator. We've got a whole spreadsheet that helps people that can download and helps people figure out the ROI, understand how this is going to affect their business. But they may or may not have used that at all, right? Like they may never have gone to that part of the web page, right? They may have just shown up and clicked on, I'd like to talk to an expert on this. I want to talk to sales.
I want to talk to sales.
Or they could have spent, they could have been looking at this stuff for 2 months. They could know a ton about it. They could have already bought one of your competitors' stuff, not liked it that much. Yeah. And this happened to us not too long ago. We had a customer, fastest deal we've ever done, a 6-figure deal we did in 10-ish days. It was because it wasn't that I was a brilliant salesperson or anyone on my team was a brilliant salesperson. They had already bought our competitor's product. They were paying for it month to month. They'd had it for a couple months and they were having some problems and didn't like it. And so they were like, oh, well, this one looks like it's awful similar. They knew the exact questions to ask when they called us up. They were like, hey, do you do this thing right here? Because we're having a problem with that. And we're like, yeah, we're doing that. And where we can set that up, no problem. And so the deal was done right there, right? They're like, oh, so you do all the things that this thing does, and you also have these capabilities? Well, okay, great. Like they were already sold on the concept, the ROI. We didn't have to talk about any of that, right? But if we just gone through our regular process, who knows where things could have gotten gummed up, right? But you listen first. Actually, I guess maybe we weren't just great listening there, but it was just they told us what they wanted. they were pretty transparent in that particular case.
Well, listen, I'm going to bounce around a little bit. I want to back up. Okay. I want to back up a little bit on historically coming into your company, Badger Maps. I want to get there. But right before that, you were with Google, Enterprise's top sales executive globally. Talk to me a little bit about that experience. I want you to almost do a little time travel there. And some of the experiences that you learned in that and how they've translated over to today's stuff and really empowered you.
Yeah, I mean, I did learn a tremendous amount when I was at Google, and obviously, really cool company, and they've one of the most innovative companies of our time. And I joined in 2008, and I started Badger in January of 2012. So I was there for 3.5 years or so, and in that time, I guess the first thing to understand about my time there was that I was on the Google Enterprise team, and what that means is I was selling their software products. So I wasn't selling the stuff that you think about when you think about Google. So, when you say I was their top salesperson, but on their software side, they're not on their ad side, which is what you think about.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely that figured in enterprise for sure. Yeah.
So, and that's the enterprise part means that so their software products are things like Google Apps, Gmail for companies, Maps, their Google Maps API. So, and that's what, obviously understanding that is what I built Badger on, right? That's a key. The maps are a key component to Badger Maps. The maps come from Google, right? So it was an interesting time to be a part of that organization because it was like the best funded startup I've ever heard of, right? Because it was a startup within Google, right? So it's this massive successful company that just, has money falling out of its ears, but they had a startup within it that they had created to compete with Microsoft because Microsoft was entering the search space. They're like, well, we're going to rebuild Office, basically email and Word and Excel. We're going to rebuild that and give it away for free. And then after they rebuilt it and gave it away for free, they were like, should we be charging for this, like to companies? And that's, I think, where it came from was they started selling this stuff, but way cheaper than Microsoft was selling it, obviously. Yeah. And so it was a very, very well-funded startup within Google. And there were about 250 employees in that part of the organization at the time. But it was a super exciting time to be a part of a company of that size within Google because we had everything we needed and we had a really cool product. We were, just repackaging something they had already built really for consumers. So it was a great fit. I mean, I guess some of my big learnings from that period of my career were one, I had sold consulting, like tech consulting before. I had sold hardware and I had sold software up till that point. And I ended up at Google because I focused first on software because I figured out, well, if you sell them to get a CIO or a CTO or whoever to sign $1 million check, if it's on hardware, we just made 200 grand. If it's on consulting, we just made 400 grand. If it's on software, well, from a contribution margin perspective, it's like 99% or 97% or whatever, right? I mean, there's a ton of software companies' margins aren't 98%, but their costs are all up front to do that extra deal, getting that extra $1 million in revenue. It flows right through, right? And so what do you get paid for the most as a salesperson? Obviously the software. And then when I was at it, so I first focused on software and then I focused on SaaS software, basically software delivered through a browser and in the cloud, right? So software used to be sold on a disk, and then today you most of the software you use is an app on your phone, and that the phone is the delivery mechanism, or a browser is the delivery mechanism, and that's paid for. Not you buy the CD software once and pay a bunch of money for it, but it's yours. You own it forever. SaaS that's delivered through a service, you tend to pay for monthly or annually, so it's kind of a stream of income. So I joined Google because I got really interested in SaaS and just where that was taking the software industry. And they were one of the only players in the space at that time. It was Salesforce, it was Google. There were only a handful. And so that's how I got involved there, was because I was at another company who was starting to dabble in SaaS enough that I understood what it was. And I was like, oh, this is where the puck is going to go. And so I was like, I better skate to this. And then I started Badger Maps in 2012. Because I was like, well, what's better than selling SaaS software? It's owning a SaaS business. So that's the story from that period of time.
You went right into it. So you saw a lane and you took the opportunity to say, hey, I'm gonna do my own thing, which I definitely can relate to that. And so now we're going to dig into Badger Maps, but now you dig into Badger Maps, right? And you're like, how long was it when you saw the idea? Okay. Because let's give our listeners an idea about the software and what it does. And then I want you to speak to like when you saw the idea and the light bulb went off and I was like, yeah, this is the lane I'm going down.
Sure. So what the software does is it's basically an app either on your phone or in your computer through the browser. And who it's for is for field salespeople, outside salespeople.
Yes.
Which is why the phone app is so important, because they're on the move out in the field as a field salesperson. And what it does for them is it puts all their customers and prospects into a mapping environment, kind of like Google Maps, but it's built on Google Maps. But they're able to do the things that salespeople need to be able to do with that information when they're going out into the field, which is primarily figuring out, well, given the constraints that I have, things like, well, I'm meeting this guy at 10 and I'm meeting this person at 2. So on Thursday, so who else should I set meetings with along the way? Who should I check in on? Who should I drop in on? Just depending on the industry, right? They
helps with time management, strategizing, execution plan. Love it. Great.
Exactly. Who do I focus on? And given now that I know who to focus on, in what order is most efficient to see them? Because I don't want to zigzag all around this part of town. I want to do this in a way that makes sense, and and I want to do it on the right day, and I want to kind of plan out my whole schedule and for the week or the month, and I want to figure this all out in a way that makes sense. And then when I'm out in the field, I want to be able to change things and shift them up because customers cancel things run late, things get out early. Like the way you can adjust on the fly can make you a lot more or less efficient. And so we've got a bunch of tools at this point that effectively just help a field salesperson run their day. And I guess it's not just field sales. It's also a bunch of field service people use it as well. Although I say not every field service person needs it, because a lot of times they're just like told where to go. It's like, well, you will go here at 10, and then you will go here at 11, and then you got to do this at 12. But it's for field service people who behave like salespeople, where they have to like come up with a plan, and there's judgment involved. Like, hey, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that, then I'm going to do this. It's the planning and the decision making aspect of it. And then when you're out in the field, it gathers information for you, makes it really easy. And this all syncs up with people's CRMs. So if they've already got Salesforce or HubSpot or Microsoft Dynamics, whatever they're using, it's you're using all the data that's in there in this mapping environment. And then as you're gathering information in the field, it's automatically going back into that system so that all the data is from the field is captured in the CRM, which is historically a big challenge for
like an API that goes into right into the CRM softwares, and you probably
we have like a,
or is it layer?
It's a better connector than like a simple API type connector. It's more like really what it's doing. It's a bi-directional connector, so it's like any changes happening in our system will show up in the CRM. Any changes happening in the CRM will show up in our system. So if marketing uploads a bunch of new leads, or if a rep goes out in the field and saves a bunch of new data, it's instantly showing up on the other side. So it happens very quickly. It's constantly updating, and it's updating very quickly. So and it can do it in bulk, meaning you can make a whole bunch of changes at once. And so it's not as brittle as it's easy to connect software in a brittle way that can have a lot of problems. But this is a very thick connection.
Thick. When did you come up? When were you like, man, I identify this as a challenge? I mean, because this is back in 2012. When did light bulb go off for you and go, man, this is a challenge I see with sales professionals. I have a solution. Maybe you live it yourself.
Yeah, I'd like to call myself a marketing genius, but but actually, in reality, I was just kind of working on products that made this pretty obvious, given my background. Like my background was in field sales, and I was my job at the time was I was in charge of the mapping API sales into the Western U.S. And so so I'm selling Google Maps, and I understand sales. So to make a sales mapping app, I'm not going to call myself a creative genius, but I knew a lot of people who were asking for this. They were like, hey, we've got all our data in the CRM, but I've got a field sales team. I want them to be able to use that data in a mapping app. Google, can you do this for us? And that's not what Google does, right? Google provides the building blocks so that people can make their own stuff, right? At least in this case, like the API is a tool that you use as, Google doesn't make Uber. Google early on gave Uber maps. Now Uber has their own maps, but they are the Google Maps API is a building block. It has routing, it has mapping, it has geocoding, it has yada yada yada, right? It does a bunch of cool stuff, but it's not the final solution. You use it as a tool to build a final solution, and so there was a lot of people wanted something like this. I could see there was a market need for it. And so it was kind of I was well positioned given what I understood about the mapping and I'd worked with mobile a lot. And this is obviously a mobile problem. And so I was well positioned to kind of go after it.
Great, man. So with organizations right now, you've got your company, you're layering in technology. So you have the tech side where you're building this thing out, you're learning it, and now you're developing a sales team. And I want to talk about that, right? In a growing environment, okay, for CEOs or anybody leading a sales organization in a growing environment. Can you map out some strategies that worked really well for you in growing your team, obviously, to get this out there and sell it?
Yeah. So I guess when you're starting a new thing, in general, you have to be someone on the founding team has to be the first salesperson. And I think that's more important than people realize, because a part of what that nobody knows the customer like the salesperson. But if you're building a new solution, you really have to have that customer focus or you're going to build the wrong thing.
Yes.
And so when you're sailing your ship in a direction, if you're 5 degrees off and you sail that direction for a week, you're actually pretty far off after a week, right? So you can even being just and you don't, because you don't know what direction, when you create a company, you don't know exactly what direction to sell. You're kind of like, well, I'm solving this type of problem, but like what that actually looks like and what problems you're actually solving and what's the most important thing. That's generally not obvious, or else someone would have done it already, right? So you're constantly calibrating in those early days. You're shifting the direction of your boat. And how do you do that? By talking to hundreds and hundreds of customers who you think are the right person to be to be purchasing this. And you want to have conversations with the person that you think is going to be the buyer of the thing once you've got it built. And the important thing about that conversation is that they have to say, when you have to ask them, will you buy this for this much money? And
it's the value there.
It's really important that that they see value and they're willing to pay for it. If you just ask them, hey, if I build this, will you buy it? They'd be like, yeah, I'd love to check it out. Well, that's different than like you need. Nobody wants to call your baby ugly. No one wants to call your idea dumb, and no one wants to tell you that you're not really solving a real problem, right? Like they're like, yeah, that's annoying. I'd appreciate it if I didn't have to tie my shoes. But will you buy that automatic shoe tire? No, I'm not gonna. I'll check it out.
Check it out. It sounds great. All right, let's get it started. Well, let me check it out, right? Yeah. People are just nice. I love that. No one wants to call your baby ugly, right? It's like everybody wants to be nice about it. But when did you have that point where you knew that, like, did you know right away you were onto a solution, or did it take you a little bit of time? How much time did it take you?
Well, I guess I had, an advantage early on in that I actually really understood the problem already because I had lived it. So I knew a lot of times the people that know how to build software don't understand the problem or the place the software is being built, right? Like software for a manufacturing firm, the guy that went to, has a degree in computer science and knows how to make the computers do what you need to make the computers do, probably has never worked on a line in a factory in wherever, so they may not understand all the problems and all the complexities and all the layers that go along with that. And so that's why it's so easy to be 5% off. Right. But we did have that advantage that I had done the job before, and I knew a lot of people who had the problem before. And I knew a lot of people, I could tell where to find more of them to talk to. Right. And so for me early on, I was really focusing on med device companies just because there's a lot of med device companies. Med devices are often sold with field or outside salespeople. And the thing that they sell is valuable enough that they care that their reps are efficient and aren't wasting time, because their reps are expensive and time's money, right? So they were interested in this even in its earliest form. And that's the other thing about software is like, if you look at the Badger app today, it does a lot of stuff for a lot of people, right? And you look at the website, it's got a whole bunch of stuff it's doing, right? However, the first version was a map, and you could you could view a map just in your browser. Didn't even work on your phone. I guess you could bring it up in the browser on your phone, but not the same. And you could view all your where are my customers. You could see them on a map, and you could colorize them by things like whatever your data was. If you had 5 different types of customers, you could make, this one green and this one yellow and this one red, or you could make the colors and the pins change by how much revenue you get from them, stuff like that. But it was just the ability to view your territory and see where all your customers were. So it was kind of just eyeballing it, right? You'd be like, well, I'm going over here. So what, click, what are all these things? Or, who's this that I'm going to be driving right by? Because, if you've got 500 customers around, it's really hard to keep all that straight. Right. And so it's just,
gets lost.
So they could build a route, but it was all in their head. Right. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So that was the first version. And we found, large med device companies to pay us money just for that capability, just that alone. They were like, just showing our reps their territories and where their customers are, that solves a problem. That will make them more efficient. And so, being able to ask them, hey, are you willing to pay for this? This is what it does. Or in some cases, you're like, this is what it almost does. If I get it here, will you pay this much money for it? And that's how you get that. That was how we got the thing off the ground. The next learnings, I guess, in terms of how to build this stuff out would be early on. You're the first salesperson. The second hires should kind of support you and scale you in your sales. But it does need to be whoever's running point on sales has to be able to control the product and make decisions about the business, because they've got to be able to. And if you have to bring in someone from the outside to run the sales, then you really, from like early on, you really have to respect and listen to that person and make sure they are that unicorn that understands product and the direction the product needs to go, and also understands sales, which is a rare animal.
That is a huge. There's really good salespeople out there, and I think the one thing that separates the good from the great is just what you said, understanding the product, how it fits in, and being able to translate that. And if you have a sales leader, like a sales manager, now you've got to add a layer of complexity in with people and handling people and customers and the product and your vision, right? So I think it's a real good point that you just made there.
Yeah. So then the next step, I think, is those people initially are helping you scale. So you've hired them to be in sales, and the sales are they're in charge of the blocking and tackling, but you're still helicoptering into the actual customer meetings, and they can run more and more of the meetings. They can run the demo. They can, but you're still there, so that you're still gathering that information. You're giving executive air cover, I guess I'd call it, on the deals. And then you can pull back more and more over time. But there are some tricky transition phases there. One way you can smooth things is don't just hire one person to scale, hire 2 at that point, because that allows you to know if something's not working, it's not the person if they're both doing badly, unless you hired 2 bad people, which would be a red flag for you. You got to learn how to hire people. But if there was one bad and one good, then you can be like, okay, it's the person, not
right. You can pivot. Yeah.
But that is, and then you can also kind of figure out, well, how much of this stuff should they be selling? Should they be selling 10 deals a month, or 1 deal a month, or 10, or 5 deals a month? It's hard to set those KPIs and expectations if there's just one person involved. But if there's some competition and multiple data points, it's really helpful. And then another challenging point is when you bring someone to manage that team, to more fully take you as the founder out, as the leader of that team. In a perfect world, you can promote someone who's already been doing it. So keep your eye on that. If when you're hiring those early people, like, hey, could they run this thing? Could they run this part of the company in 2 years? But bringing someone that is a difficult and risky point there when you're bringing someone in between you and the sales team, which eventually has to happen, right, as you scale, and then are you having then as you start splitting up the sales team into different people, there's like you got your outbound sales reps, your inbound lead sales reps, your big deal sales reps, your account executives. You've got your customer success people, the people that actually manage the existing customer relationships once they're already using this stuff, breaking up the team. And this is a little different if you're in every industry. If you're selling shoes or medical devices or software, it's obviously all different. But the more you can break up the team into pieces and specialize the team, you often gain efficiencies there.
Yeah, and I think that comes with the overtime, right? I as you go and you evolve, you're going to want. It's a really good point. You're going to want to compartmentalize things and understand efficiencies. And it's one of the things that I always impress upon any of the clients who I work with, or the companies I've put together. I really focused, and I've talked about this before, but I focus on two things: the NBA and the CBA. The NBA is your new business acquisition. How are you doing that? What are all the KPIs and everything in that bucket? And then the CBA is your current business acquisition. How are you retaining your clients? Who's happy? If someone wasn't, why weren't they? How can we improve on that? Or are we staying in touch with our clients? So every business obviously is a little bit different, but those foundational elements really layer up well. And then what happens is, I always like to say this, and I use these acronyms, the MBA and your CBA is doing really well, your DNA starts getting so much stronger. So that's kind of my philosophy and some of the things I talk about. But yeah, it lines up really well with what you're saying.
Well, another thing that I see a lot is people under-investing in their customer success, like the people that are doing their CDA, as you said, like the people who are managing the existing customers. It's an easy place to chintz on, but I would over-invest in that early in a company's life, because you really want to have someone holding their fingers on the pulse of your customer, and they have to have a direct line of communication to leadership, the people creating the product. So you can have a tight feedback loop there. What do our existing customers really want? And from a direction of the company from a direction of the company perspective, one of the best things you can do is listen to what your existing customers want, unless you've got something weird strategically going on where you're like, actually, we got to pivot to this type of thing. In general, if there is doubt about what you should do next, listening to your largest or most important, most strategic existing customers that you want more like them, listening to what they are asking for is probably the direction you should go. If they want it purple, probably purple is an important option to have.
Yes. So how do you balance that line though, Steve, right? Between saying, okay, here's our foundation of what we offer as a product, and because you can't be everything to all, right? I mean, if a company comes in and says, hey, I want this, I want this, I want this, and we're jumping through some hoops. I'm actually we're going to be working with a company right now who's in probably about the fourth or fifth year, and they are just taking everything right now, and they're not understanding what's profitable. I mean, they do understand what's profitable, but you got to spend your time on things that are most profitable. But I guess going back to my question is, how do you manage that balance between wanting to accommodate, but yet hold and not do too much accommodation where it's eating into your margin, right?
Yeah, it's like a lot of complex decisions. They're tricky because there's several variables. You want to do things should you do it, it's going to drive a lot of value. It drives the opportunity. You want to do things that not just one person wants, but lots of people want. That being said, we have built things just for one big customer, right? And sometimes that's been the right call, probably in retrospect. Other times it was the wrong call. But one of our biggest customers wanted us to do something kind of weird that I don't know if they're the only ones using it, and I don't know if anyone else is going to need it like this. But they needed it, and I put 3 engineers on it for a month and a half to build the thing out for them, because they pay us $500,000 a year. So if they say jump, I'm like, where do you want me to jump? But in general, you want to do things that are scalable. So like things that create a lot of value, the opportunities there that are scalable. Hopefully half your customers are going to want the thing that you're going to build it. The lower effort and to do the thing, meaning fewer people are going to have to be involved. It's not as hard, the better, and the less time it's going to take you, the better. And so you got all these different variables and you want to maximize / minimize if it's a bad thing, as much as you can. Sometimes you want to just make a spreadsheet and have a list of here's all the things we could do and have those 4 columns and give them all points and add them up and sort like, cause it is hard. It's hard to figure out.
It is. And I think it comes down to profitability too of it, right? I think that's just what it comes down is the juice versus the squeeze, I think they say.
And there's 100 I mean, we have 180 things that have been asked for and we could build. And, but the hard thing, and all of them create value to someone or know what the person know what to ask for it or know what to thought about it. But, when you're actually deciding what to do, I think you want to have some rubric that you're using to actually sort things. And that's the one, that's kind of how we do it. How valuable is it? Like how much more money are we going to make because we do this? / what customers are we going to create a lot of value for? And they're not going to leave, I guess is the other way of looking at that. So, and how many man hours is this going to take, which kind of, I guess, involves time and effort. So those, if you understand those things, that kind of can guide you in the direction of what you should do next. And you just always do the most important thing. And that's not to say that critical things don't pop up, but you do need some way of making decisions, or else you can kind of end up with a culture of just whoever's loudest is getting what they want. And you don't want that. You want to make sure you can keep things strategic and keep things, going in the direction that's going to be the most impactful.
That's a good point. All right. I want to shift gears here a little bit. Okay. I want to go back to a little bit more on the economy side, but more importantly for those sales managers or those sales leaders out there right now who are listening to this. Obviously we talked about some, and even whether the economy right now or just sales challenges in general, but what are some of the strategies that sales managers need to use right now to help their teams be more successful, or whether it's on a skill side or a tool side? Obviously your tool is fantastic. I think it's fantastic for efficiencies, but what are some of the things that you see right now from a sales management side, sales leadership side?
Well, I mean, I think first coaching is huge. Up-leveling your team's skills is half of the job of a sales leader. So whether you're doing pre-call strategizing with your team, debriefing after meetings and calls, going on ride-alongs, co-working or coaching on a specific opportunity. That's a huge thing you can do to really move the needle across the board. In uncertain economic times, negotiation is always huge. Helping you almost can't lose unless you just talked about it. You almost can't lose going over how to defend margins, how to sell value, when to communicate value. Everybody needs to do that all the time, right? How to build pipeline. I think, things are harder, things are drier. Maybe, in the good times we forget how to build pipeline, but when it's almost like it's always better to act like you need to build more pipeline. Like you can't have too many deals beating down your door, right? So I think that's helping your team think about prospecting and maybe you have to rethink about who you're selling to, how to approach different customer profiles. In general, sharpening those tools, sharpening those skills is a great thing for managers to think about. There's you can work on your messaging. I think messaging is and how helping your people go to market with a better message. Whenever things are kind of uncertain or difficult, changing your message in good times. Hey, we'll help you do better is great messaging, right? But I think in a trickier time, we're going to change from "we'll help you do better" to "we'll help you do more with less," and let me show you how. And then you have to show them how, in terms of real dollars. You'll help them do more with less money, less manpower, less resources, but that will help people. It's like should Badger say, will help you sell more with your field sales team? Or should our message be, if you're using Badger Maps, your outside sales teams will generate the same revenue, even though, the things are tough right now, or your team is smaller right now. So the second in a tough, depending on how tough the times are, the second message will really resonate a lot better, even though, those are basically saying the same thing. The messaging will resonate differently in different times.
Yeah, always big. And I think what you're saying here too is leading with challenges, right? And I think the more specific that you can get with your prospects on what their challenges are and lead with that, it's great messaging. And I think you just hit that on the head. It's just being able to understand that, listen, we know what's going on right now. And when you use our program, these are the things that we're going to be able to help with. And, companies come to me because we do this, and this for you. So that's good. Really good stuff. All right. So we talked about leadership too. It's always easy to lead, man, when things are going great. Things are always falling in place. Man, anybody can be a leader at that point. But what do you believe are the biggest strengths in times that are turbulent or a little bit more challenging? What are some of the things that you find in leadership that stick out as being, a foundational element to help people go get through tougher times?
Well, I think, I don't know if you know who General Stan McChrystal is, but American general in Afghanistan, and he has some great leader and some great stuff that he's said about this. The basic premise being, to be successful in times of uncertainty, a leader should explore pushing decision-making down to the front line. So you want to listen to the boots on the ground. They have firsthand knowledge of what's going on, what is working, what isn't working, where our customers' heads at as things are changing really quickly, right? It's a part. A great salesperson's always got their finger to the wind, right? And so, obviously this is his philosophy because of managing a super complex situation in Afghanistan, but also works in business, right? So
love that. I love that. Pushing it down to the front line.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a thing that I think people leaders tend to clam up and want to own everything and grab everything and get their fingers on everything in a difficult time. But it's a more important time to push the decision making away from you and down to, obviously know what's going on, but let them be nimble. You can figure out what new skills or strategies reps need to deploy or employ, and what things they need to do to be successful in the new situations if times are changing. Yeah. One thing you can do that is look at the reps that are being successful and look at the deals you are winning. Why did you win them? You want to really dig in and figure out what made those things work, and then replicate what made that work throughout your team. So find out, hey, this rep was successful. Empower them to coach the rest of the sales team. So, figure out what was it a skill this person has? Is it a play they're running? What is it? So, yeah, that's great. One way you can do this is you can be like, hey, let's just say one of your reps, you dig in and figure out, hey, this one person's being more successful than everyone else. Why? What's going on? And you figure out, hey, they figured out that this segment is buying a lot right now for whatever reason, right? Could be a lot of things, but something's going on where this is where we can be successful. If they have figured out how to make a connection with this industry or this customer type, give them the mic and have them teach those tricks to teach that play to everyone else on the team. On the weekly call, a week before, I'd be like, hey, could you tell everyone how you won the blah 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 deal, and how did you approach, what messaging, what did you do to approach this new industry that we don't usually sell into and get successful? I'd like you to teach the rest of the team, because everyone's got that in their territories. They can all seek out that specific type of manufacturer who's doing that specific type of thing. And then they can, and so you can kind of, and it could be with anything, any skill, any ability, any area of success. Empower on a weekly basis, have figure out something that someone's doing right and have them teach everyone else. Gives them the opportunity to be a leader, take some pressure off you because you don't figure it all out, and have them educate everybody, and that can really move the needle.
Yeah, we say to relieve the pressure, put pressure on areas that are working really well. I mean, you put pressure on areas that are going really, really well, that will relieve pressure in other areas that are not, and gives you more clarity. This has been great, man. Listen, I can't believe it's already been like almost an hour we've been on this thing. This is freaking awesome. I want to ask a couple more questions before we roll out here, okay? And these are more the myths, okay, that we've heard, because I come from the field sales world as you do, and one of these myths I want you to talk about: field sales is dead. Cold calling is dead. Cold emails are dead. We got all this tech these days, right? We got the AI, we got this, we got that. And I'm not cold. Cold calling is dead. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is something that I've been hearing for 20 years. Is that, the world's changed, and we're just not going to be doing this in 3 years. I just ran into some article the other day that someone was saying in 10 years it's going to be like this. And I'm like, how much you want to bet? How much you want to bet? It was and in some cases it is. If you sell rubber gloves to doctors' offices and you're wondering where your sales went, it's that you can buy those online on Amazon real cheap, right? So like, if something can truly just be sold on Amazon, no, you're not going to pay someone to sell it over the phone or in person. You're not going to, but maybe you're still going to try to kick in doors and generate leads and win new business on it. But so it's not to say that nothing ever changes. Certainly it does. But like, cold calling, obviously not dead. Cold emails, I think there's more emails being sent now than ever, which makes it kind of harder to get through to people. But I think it's really hard to replicate connections between humans, right? So face-to-face meetings aren't going to be replaced. Can you connect with with people over Zoom meetings, and hopefully we'll have more interactions, because Zoom meetings are just easier to, because you don't have to travel to someone. But if someone's paying you a good chunk of money, it's probably worth jumping in the car for 20 minutes or jumping on that plane, right? If it's enough money. Yep. I've always said, if someone's going to be paying you more than $50,000 a year, you better have gotten on a plane and taken them out for some steaks once a year. It's important. And
with you, I'm totally with you, man. I think it's, what I think it is, honestly, Steve. I think it's laziness, and I think it's a bullshit cop out. I just don't think people want to do it. And they lean on this crutch to go, well, technology's changed and things have changed, and cold calling is dead. Shit.
It's what people want. It's like a lot of things. It's what people want versus what is really going to happen. Like, everyone would like to work from home. Everyone would like to never wear shoes again and just sit in their air conditioned basements. But it's probably not going to happen. We're not all just going to sit in a lazy boy all day, and AI is going to do our jobs for us, and we're going to get paid by the government or something. Like, it's not. I don't see that happening. It's funny. You read the same articles over and over again, like, hey, this is the future of work, and I'm like, is it? Let's follow up on that in 10 years.
Right.
We'll see if your prediction is true, but and once again, things do change, but it's hard to. I think jobs are hard, and we wish they were easier, but they're hard, and it's a more competitive world, not a less competitive one. I mean, the major themes of our time, I think globalization is one of them, and that's. It's making it a more competitive world, not a less competitive world. So
I agree with that.
Technology, globalization, a lot of people struggle, but a big part of that struggle is that it's just a more competitive world. The thing that you were doing is now being done somewhere else for a lot cheaper. And so, does that mean that you're screwed? No, it might mean you have to do something new, learn something new, learn a new skill, get after something in a different way, because you can't claw that these major trends that are just happening. Technology is happening, mobility is happening, globalization is happening, and AI is happening. All these things, right? These mega trends of our time. You want to ride those waves, not swim against them. Now, for the people that we serve, I think there's as much field sales happening today as there was 10 years ago. It's funny, living in San Francisco, people always been like, do people even do that stuff? They go and meet people face to face. I'm like, yeah, I mean, Google doesn't do that very much because they have a giant monopoly on the internet. They don't have to. Facebook doesn't do that. But who has to do that is people that sell real things to real people that cost a lot of money. Like, it's like, what do people even have car dealerships anymore? Why wouldn't you just order a car online? It's like, well, because that's not how it works. Have you ever bought a car? No, I live in Manhattan. I've never bought a car. Well, when you buy one, you'll probably want to test drive it, and you're going to have to go somewhere to do that. I think it is a rapidly changing world, and humans aren't great at change. But I do see a lot of crazy predictions. I'm like, well, we'll see. We'll see if we're all just living in our lazy boy in our basement, eating something that tastes exactly like Cheetos, but it's actually as good for us as quinoa. We'll see if that happens. I hope we're there in the next 6 years. But
man, it comes full circle, right? It comes full circle, though. It comes back to the question prior, which was leadership. Listen, that's a leader is not somebody who just stands in front of the room and barks out orders. That's not leadership. Leadership is what you just talked about. If you're identifying that something is not working, switching up, pivoting, getting trust in your organization, speaking up, that's leadership too. If you see something, I love that front lines, leading at the front lines, because that's where it all happens. And I think it's a great way to close this up today and really kind of have it all come back full circle, because that is true leadership right there. And this has been great. This has been so insightful. Man, we could go for we could probably do a marathon. We might have to do another one.
You think people want to listen to us for longer than this?
I don't know, man. Maybe not. We'll see. I'm excited to get on your show.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm really excited about getting on your show. Yeah. So where can people check you out if they want to get a hold of you or just reach out? Where can they find you?
Totally. Yeah. And I think we've already scheduled you to come on the show here, which will be great. My podcast is called Outside Sales Talk. So it's a podcast specifically for outside salespeople. And I bring on experts like you, and people can listen to what they have to say from the perspective of they're experts in sales, and they're talking about their areas of expertise specifically to field and outside salespeople. So that's kind of what makes our little podcast different. But that's called Outside Sales Talk. And the best way to get a hold of me is probably LinkedIn. That's where to find me. Feel free to reach out, and I try to put out some good stuff there as well. It's been awesome to be here.
Yeah, great, man. I've really loved having you on the show. I'm looking forward to getting together with you and jumping on your show. That's going to be a lot of fun. So, Steve, thanks for being here today. I know our guests got a lot out of it. Everybody, thank you. Check us out at salesproformance.com. Like this show, share this show. We're getting some great feedback with guests like Steve, who are on here giving great insight on journey of business development, personal development, sales growth, business growth. I mean, we've had it all at this point. And Steve, again, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
And everybody, take care. Yeah. Wealth, health, and success for everybody. Thanks again. Appreciate you.
The Sales Proformance Show.